I taught my neighbor's parrot how to swear, and now I'm his favorite person. I live in a small apartment complex where everyone knows everyone. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, is this sweet 70-something widow who spends most of her time tending to her plants or doting on her parrot, Charlie. Charlie is an African gray, known for their intelligence and insane ability to mimic human speech. Now, Mrs. Jenkins adores Charlie and treats him like her child. She taught him all sorts of polite phrases like, "Good morning," and "I love you." It was cute, but the constant repetition of these phrases drove me nuts. Every morning I'd hear, "Good morning, good morning, good morning," on loop until I wanted to shove earplugs into my brain. One day, while Mrs. Jenkins was out running errands, I heard Charlie squawking through the open window. For no reason other than boredom, I yelled, "Shut up, you little jerk!" The squawking stopped. A second later, I heard, clear as day, "Shut up, you little jerk." I couldn't stop laughing. Over the next week, whenever Mrs. Jenkins wasn't home, I'd teach Charlie a new phrase or word. My repertoire wasn't the most family-friendly, but it wasn't too awful either, just enough to spice things up. A few days later, I heard it, Mrs. Jenkins screaming. I rushed outside, worried something had happened, but there she was, glaring at Charlie, who sat smugly in his cage. She turned to me and said, "Do you know where Charlie might have learned to say, 'Bite me, loser'?" I shrugged, struggling to keep a straight face, and said, "Parrots are smart. Maybe he picked it up from TV." After that, Charlie became the star of the building. He started roasting everyone in the most absurd ways. When my landlord came by to fix the plumbing, Charlie hollered, "You're late, you lazy bum!" Mrs. Jenkins was mortified. But the rest of us? We were crying with laughter. Now, whenever Mrs. Jenkins leaves, she lets me babysit Charlie, though she's suspiciously specific about not teaching him new words. Of course, I don't listen. Just last week, I taught him to say, "You call that cooking?" in a perfect British accent. Mrs. Jenkins pretends to be annoyed, but I've caught her laughing more than once. And Charlie? That bird loves me. Every time I walk by, he squawks, "There goes my best buddy." Honestly, I think Mrs. Jenkins loves it too. She just doesn't want to admit it. So yeah, I might have turned the most polite parrot in the world into a little smartass, but I regret nothing. Charlie's the real MVP.